Hi, Rachel's asked me today to talk to you about something to do with workstation setup. The first obvious thing to say is that there's increasing evidence that whatever posture you adopt, there's less of a likelihood that it's going to contribute to the onset of musculoskeletal pain than we initially thought. Having said that, if you're predisposed to neck pain, back pain, shoulder pain, the longer you sit, the more you're sedentary, and the worse your workstation setup is, or the less advantageous it is for you, the more likelihood you're going to exacerbate whatever condition you've got. So, as well as getting up and moving, you can mitigate the stress from sitting by having as good a setup as possible. I wanted to start with the chair because a lot of people aren't too sure about what adjustable features their chair has, or if at all it's adjustable, other than the gas up and down that just about all chairs are going to have. I like to ask people to do the most obvious thing, which is to turn their chair upside down and see what sort of adjustable features each of their chairs has. Now, this is a decent chair. It's not a brilliant chair. It's an economical chair with a number of adjustable features. This has got 3 levers. It's a 3-leverable adjustable chair. It also has a knob on the bottom at which you can increase or reduce the resistance, and we'll see what that's for. Other adjustable features on this chair, the armrests are up and down. I think that's a really handy one. We'll talk about that another time, I think. The backrest is also adjustable. This is ratchet adjustable. So it goes up, one click at a time, and when it gets all the way to the top, it will release all the way back to the bottom. Okay? That's about it really. So let's go over the levers on this. First one at the front is up down, bog standard. Most chairs are going to have that. You'll see the lower I go, the higher my knees get relative to my hips, and that's an issue that we'll probably talk again at a different time about. So that's up down. The next one releases the synchronous free floating device, or asynchronous. We'll talk about the difference between those another time as well. But that essentially enables the whole chair to move, the backrest and the seat pan to move forward and backwards. And the third is the backrest angle tilt, and when I release that, the backrest goes backwards or forwards. Again, that resistance, the knob underneath at which you set that, will dictate how much resistance, how easily it releases, and how much it pushes you forward. Okay, so the armrests go up and down. Other armrests will go angle inwards and outwards, and even another adjustable feature with armrests is to enable them to slide further out and in. Really, I tell people that there might be a maximum of about 14 or 15 ways that you can adjust chairs, believe it or not. Probably 6 or 7 or 8 of those are desirable. Probably 4 or 5 of them are superfluous to what you need. And at least 3, 4, 5 are going to be essential. So the essential ones are the up down. The free floating is more than desirable, and the backrest is an essential one. These armrests are gold, I think, and again, like I keep saying, we'll talk about that at a different time. Backrest needs to go up and down so that the height of that curve out in the backrest sits in the height of your curve in. Now, is it our mandate today to start talking about how to adjust your chair and what order and in which to do it? Rachel's nodding behind the camera, so that means I've got to do what she says. Okay, so let's talk briefly about how one goes about adjusting those features. First one to look at is up down. I said before, the lower we go, the higher my knees go relative to my hips. That's an issue because you don't have 90-degree movements in your hip. So that rest of that ability for your knees to get at least as high as your hips comes from your pelvis rolling backwards, and you losing that lumbar spine lordosis, or the curve inwards. Now that's going to put more pressure on your lower back. So in broad terms, the seat needs to be as high as it possibly can to bring your knees lower relative to your hips, while your feet stay flat on the floor. And if you've got short legs like me, and for you to get your knees lower than your hips, your feet don't have a good stable base, That's just about the only reason why you need a footrest. So a footrest would come in handy for height challenged individuals. So that's up, down. What do we do next? I would probably go for adjusting the height of the backrest such that as we said previously, that curve out sits in the small of my back. Let's presume I've done that for the sake of the exercise. What goes next? Well, let's have a look at where that orientates me. So with backrest sitting in the small of my back, my feet flat on the floor, and my knees lower than my hips, we're probably the next best thing to go for is the backrest. If I release that backrest, it falls backwards with the type of resistance I've got on it at the moment. I want it to get to a point where I'm still able to have, sitting back into the chair, largely my ear over my shoulder, over my hip. That's going to mean those curves that are so important for sustaining the loads we subject ourselves to are maintained. And ideally, not vertical, but around about 10-15 degrees back from the vertical. And if the seat pan can sit a little bit lower, so again, those knees are lower than the hips, that's what we want. Not too far, not too straight, and certainly not too far the other way. So I would say that's too straight and just backwards of the vertical, where my shoulder blades are able to maintain connection with that backrest, and the curves is supported, my feet are flat on the floor, and my knees are lower than my hips. So let's go for these armrests, which I thought was going to be for another video. The armrests, if I don't like them and they go low enough, then I can get close enough to get support from the desk top for my upper limbs. I think it's better to have these armrests around about the same level or marginally lower than the desktop. Then when I sit back into the chair, and this arm can hang free, the forearm at 90 degrees is supported by the armrests, and I can drive this mouse, as I'm left-handed, with the largest muscle mass possible, which is my shoulder and upper arm muscles. So it's not 100% supported, but it's a lot more supported than if those armrests weren't there and I was reaching for the chair, reaching for the support from the desktop, where I've only got some support through my wrist. That forces me forward, my ear's further forward than my shoulders, my back's more rounded, and I'm going to last 15-20 minutes here before I'm going to get sore. So, back into the chair, ear over shoulder over hips, feet flat on the floor, knees lower than my hips, forearms supported at 90 degrees. That leaves us with that resistance. Now, I talked about the free floating device, wrong lever. If I go for the right one and release that almost catapults me further forward. And you can see now that the whole seat pan backrest has moved, tilted forward together. If I wound that resistance down lower, then it's not going to so readily push me forward. I've just gone more resistance, not less. Okay, so now it's a little bit more of a Goldilocks situation. If I lean back into the chair, it will take my weight, and the curve is still supported, the ear's still over my shoulder, and I've changed one posture for another, and not changed that relationship between where I need the support and where I don't. And if I were to lean forward, it still supports me without me having to work to keep that chair from pushing me forward. So there's a tipping point, there's a Goldilocks point between where you need enough support and resistance wound up and where there's not enough, so that I have to work either my abs or my back extensors to sit more supported in this chair. And that's the free floating device. The other thing to say about this is better chairs tend to have, the thing about better chairs is they tend to have a center of gravity with that free floating device that's in the center. You could see how quickly, when the resistance was turned up, how quickly that chair pushed me forward. The center of gravity in cheaper chairs is further forward, such that you're always going to be tipped forward if that resistance isn't perfect with that free floating device. So really better chairs, as well as better fabrics and better components. One of the things that distinguishes a better from a lesser quality office chair is the center of gravity on that free floating device. They call this asynchronous free floating because the back and the backrest and the seat pan move in synchronicity. Funnily enough, if they move at different rates, the backrest can move at a different rate to the seat pan. They call that a synchronous free floating device for some reason. Anyway, that's a bit too much information. All right, so that's the office chair. We'll probably talk at another time about other features, about how to interface yourself with the desk or other considerations with office workstation setup. But in terms of the chair, that's a pretty good start. Thanks very much for watching.